It was another relatively quiet day in the market with the S&P trading in a fairly narrow range, about 30 points wide, closing up 0.14% at 62.6856. We've basically been bouncing the last two trading sessions between 62.40 and 62.70. During the last couple of hours of today's trading session, it does look like buyers attempted to gain back control after the weakness the last couple of days. Gamma exposure remains large at the 6,300 strike and above. If we just scroll up here, we can see large GEX between 6,300 and 6,400. This looks to be a potential breakout for another leg higher if we can get back above all-time highs here at 6,280. One of the topics we've been discussing in the last couple of live streams is this consolidation pattern that we've seen over the last week to week and a half, and we've been trying to determine whether this is distribution or just consolidation before the next leg higher. In our view, the volume is relatively light. We'd see most likely heavier volume if this was in fact distribution. So it hasn't quite come in yet. We're monitoring this on a real-time basis, but that combined with gamma exposure positively skewed, I think has probabilities leaning towards a continuation leg higher. Of course, as always, we want to maintain defensiveness on the downside. And so even though we have all of this in our favor to the upside, we want to be cautious. We are maintaining hedges in this zone to offer some protection. You've heard us mention this many times in our previous videos, and this is just part of our overall portfolio strategy, locking in long positions as the market continues moving higher, rolling and adjusting our hedges to protect our portfolio in case the market sells off.
Anthony, we have the VIX monthly option expiration Wednesday morning pre-market at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And so this week could see some interesting volatility, I think, potentially in both directions. But I did want to take a look at an interesting potential setup with the Dow Jones DIA. So just like the other indices, it had this powerful move up from the April lows. It's been consolidating since this really strong move up that started in mid-June. And basically, we have what some might justify as a bull flag. Ever since we've been below the whole moving average, it's been consolidating sideways. The whole is at 449.01 currently, just below our upper dealer cluster zone at 450, from 450 to 455. So the upper dealer cluster zone, for those that don't know, is where we expect dealers might become sellers based on the positioning that we see at those levels. And the thing that caught my attention from a technical standpoint is that even though most of the 455 to 460 GEX is concentrated August and September, I wouldn't be surprised to see an attempt higher toward 450, surpass the upper Keltner channel and test above the whole moving average and enter that upper dealer cluster zone, although I am expecting that move to reject for now. So you can see this light blue is volume. So we have high volume at 415 and 420 strikes. I'm not necessarily looking at that as a target for a downside move, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got close to it. And that wouldn't be very much anyway. I mean, 20 points on DIA is 5%. So could we make it down to 425? Yeah, I think that's pretty realistic, and that'd be a healthy pullback given the upward move that we've seen.
Thanks, Sean. We mentioned the consolidation period over the last week to week and a half in the S&P, but even though the broader indices are somewhat consolidating, there are still opportunities to the long side with some extreme bullish momentum. Palantir is one of those examples. Today was up nearly 5%, closing just under the 150 strike at 149.15. We've been trading Palantir actively. We entered a position back here around the July 2nd timeframe in the low 130s, and we just exited today as Palantir was coming up into this big 150 strike, which was one of the largest gamma exposure concentrations. And if you've been watching our videos for the last couple of weeks, we've been trading in and out of Palantir. We actually had a mirrored trade in both of our portfolios. We had the 135, 145 Palantir call debit spreads. We locked in $23,950 in our larger portfolio and just under $1,000 in our smaller portfolio, $958 actually to be precise. These call debit spreads were expiring this Friday, so we were looking for one more leg higher to lock in profits. We got that this morning on the big move up, and I just want to show you what the play looked like as we were entering the position. This was the setup that really caught our attention. Palantir bouncing off this trend over the last month or so. This was back on June 2nd, as I mentioned, Palantir trading around 131.81, but look at this gamma exposure at the 140 strike, and look at all the volume that was coming in that particular day. This stair-step pattern of volume just showing that there's interest at higher strikes. So we felt like this was a really great risk-reward setup. We could set our stops right below this 130 level in case there was a breakdown. Coming back over to our current chart, as long as we maintain above the 50-day EMA on Palantir, and as long as gamma exposure remains positively skewed, we're going to continue to look for these low risk, high probability setups. So we exited our position today. We'll be looking for any kind of pullback, around the 140 strike or slightly lower. If we can get that in the next week or two, that might be an entry point for a new position, especially if we continue to see volume coming in at these higher strikes. So that's going to be something we continue to watch for and trade in our portfolio and potentially in our weekly tactical trades as well.
I thought I'd bring up a new one today, at least a new one for us in terms of covering it on YouTube, and that's Halliburton, HAL. It's been very slowly climbing since April, but today we saw a pretty big red candle down almost 4.6% and just below the whole moving average, which is at 22.13. So this close at 22.02 is just barely below it. Of course, we do have volume at higher strikes in the options market, but also the upper dealer cluster zone at 25 has not yet been hit. So with that also matching the rising upper Keltner channel, I like to see GEX meeting my technical indicators. What I like about our 3D graph is that it shows the largest amount of GEX expiring Friday is at 23. So that's obviously a higher target than the 22 that we currently see. And 24 out to August 15, which would be almost 10%. And if you go out to October, you'll see prices and GEX clusters as high as 27. So to me, it seems like the bias is higher. And when we see a stock that has a positive picture, but maybe one day that's a big sell-off, sometimes those are good opportunities.
Thanks, Sean. Let's take a look at AMD. Basically flat on the day, down 0.12%, closing at 146.24. That really doesn't tell the whole story, actually. If we zoom in to the chart, we can see that today's trading action saw AMD sell off on that first 15-minute candle all the way down to the 142 level. This was prior support from the last couple of trading sessions, and a big bounce off of that level from 142 all the way up through the 147 level. We see gamma exposure is largest at the 150 strike on a net basis, positive gamma exposure, as well as volume, over 80,000 contracts traded at that 150 strike. So a big move off of support. I like that AMD continues to be trading in this uptrend, and it does look like, if we just zoom out on the chart, it does look like AMD is bouncing back up here against this 147 resistance that we've now hit several times. This is almost like your classic cup and handle pattern. This may take another day or two to play out, but I'm looking for a breakout above 147, maybe 147.25, for a move through that 150 level. And we actually just started a couple of new channels in our community Discord, which I'll put a link down in the description below. You guys can check that out for free. But our zero DTE setups and our weekly setups are relatively new channels, and AMD is a trade that we took last week. We actually locked in over $500 profit on our AMD 137-140 call debit spreads. So we had originally bought 3 of the July 11th AMD 137-140 call debit spreads for 95 cents. Close those out for $2.65 in a really short 2-day trade. So AMD could make for a potential catch-up trade back to its recent high at the end of 2024. As the market is making all-time highs, AMD is still slightly behind, but has momentum with it. And I think if momentum continues in the market overall, AMD has the possibility to outperform if it can break through this 150 level.
Apple caught my attention today, given that it was down more than the overall market. And actually, I saw what I thought might be an interesting opportunity for this week. So I posted this before the close, and let's take a closer look. And I'll kind of work backward. Let's look at the 3D graph. It's really prominent, this 215 GEX cluster expiring Friday. This really interested me that this 215 stands out so strongly. That also represents the upper dealer cluster zone. And so not only is it the biggest GEX cluster for Friday, but it's the largest GEX cluster that we see overall, including all expirations. And that would represent a slight overshoot of retesting the whole moving average, which is at 213.83, well within the upper Keltner channel, which is why surpassing 213.83 or 215 would not be surprising. And we're somewhat far away from the hole too. So I like the technical setup above the middle Keltner channel, room above to move up. And if we see any further dips, it's definitely one that we'll be looking to add.
And we are running a limited time promotion, $300 off our yearly portfolio manager tier subscription. Use code SUMMER 2025 at checkout. We've got a few spots remaining, but this promotion does end soon, so take advantage of it while you can. Members get full access to our Gamma Exposure dashboard, our option flow analytics tools, as well as our algorithmic trading strategies, and you'll also get full access to our community Discord. Our Discord community's got a ton of great traders in there sharing their own trade setups and ideas, and you can also track our trades in real time as we manage our options portfolio. I'll put links in the description below for all of that so you guys can check that out when you get a chance. Thanks so much everybody for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.